I'm Dr. Stephen Bamford. I work in the astronomy group at the University of Nottingham. I am an advanced fellow here, so I'm funded by STFC for a 5-year research position, after which I'll actually be on a permanent lectureship. I am Science Director of the Citizen Science Alliance, so that's an organisation which we set up 2 years ago in order to produce a set of citizen science projects under the name of the Zooniverse, and one of those projects is Galaxy Zoo. That's probably the most famous project of the Zooniverse, and actually predates it. So Galaxy Zoo started 4 years ago, and it was actually the success that we had with Galaxy Zoo that led us to set up the Citizen Science Alliance and the Zooniverse. The broadest way of defining citizen science is just anything that involves the public, and by the public I mean people who wouldn't normally think of themselves as scientists, certainly not professionally, and involving those people, the public, in the scientific process, in scientific projects. That's the broadest definition, but I have several refinements to that definition that I think are actually very important and really make citizen science as a word something that's much more rigorous and appealing, really. So the first is that you're making use of members of the public, but that should be voluntary effort. So if you're employing people to do a project for you, then that's not really citizen science. They're kind of being forced to do it to some degree, whether they'd like to do the job or not. And the people should have an active role. So there are some projects which term themselves citizen science that essentially just want you to install a screensaver on your computer and then kind of forget about it, really. And while they do have some aspects of citizen science to them, that people have to go and find out about the project in order to actually be involved, and so there is an exchange of information there. They are somewhat involved in the scientific process. It really ends quite quickly in most cases, and really the project is just after the person's CPU cycles, not after the person's abilities. So by active involvement of the participants, I mean that they should actually that the scientific project actually needs their abilities rather than their computer's abilities. Another aspect that I think is important is that the science that you're doing as part of a citizen science project should ultimately be of professional quality. It should be of the same quality as that is being done in universities, and that would be of a high enough standard to be published in, say, respected journals. So that doesn't mean that the individual participants within a citizen science project have to have anything like that kind of expert knowledge. It just means that when you aggregate their contributions together, you end up with something that's really worthwhile and is actually benefiting science as a whole. Then the final part is that making sure that there was a point to doing that science through citizen science. So you shouldn't have a situation where you're doing something through citizen science, you're involving the public in something that you could have done a better job of without involving them. So if you have an automated method that works better than even a professional, an expert could do something, then you shouldn't be asking a lot of members of the public to do it if your automated method would do a better job. So you should be having active participation from the volunteers. You should be generating real science that's of professional quality, and you should be using citizen science because that is the best way to do your science, not because it's currently fashionable. So the great thing about citizen science is that it allows you to do things that you just couldn't do without it, and that's really where I feel that citizen science should be used. So there are many cases in all areas of science now where you have professional researchers using a well-established technique to analyse their data, And maybe that technique has been around for tens of years. And originally it was maybe a very manual task, no computers involved at all. And then more and more data has come in over time, data volumes growing exponentially, and they've been forced, or they've chosen to automate aspects of the task to make it more efficient. But there's still an important element of human involvement, human judgment to be made in the process. In a lot of fields, we're now reaching a limit where the data is increasing, but it's getting harder and harder to automate those last few steps. So computer science is desperately working on this, trying to solve all these different issues. But really, at the present time, it's quite common for computer science to not have a solution that works anywhere near as well as a person just looking at an image and saying what they see. So in that case, that's a great opportunity to use citizen science, because you've got lots of data coming in, and you only have two kind of traditional options. One is you only look at a fraction of the data using your normal method. The alternative is that you try and bodge together some automatic computational method and apply that, but you don't understand that so well, it's not quite as accurate, so that adds a whole set of difficulties as well. Ideally, what you'd like is to be able to stick with your established method, at least until the computer scientists have figured out how to do it better, but still crunch through that huge pile of data. So one way to do that would be to fund thousands of researchers, but in the university kind of structure, all of those would be very highly qualified and experts in their field, and yet they'd be spending all their time doing something that was fairly repetitive and fairly simple. What citizen science brings is the opportunity to get the public involved, so that you take away those repetitive, fairly simple tasks, but still potentially very interesting tasks, and you get members of the public involved to do those, which frees up the time for the researchers to actually concentrate on the things they're good at, the things that need their expert knowledge, like actually producing science and having the ideas and bringing all the results together with the rest of the literature to produce something that can be used by other professionals. So that's kind of maybe a long pitch, but a pitch to a researcher is basically, if you have a situation in your department where one of your postdocs or one of your students is spending a lot of time doing a fairly repetitive, straightforward task, instead of focusing on the other areas of their research, then that's probably a prime candidate for trying out citizen science, and a place for citizen science to really change the way that project works.